Media fact-checker. US-Iran conflict escalation with Trump's threats and regional tensions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to obliterate or blow up Iran's Karg Island, which handles 90% of Iran's oil exports, if a ceasefire deal is not reached by April 6, ABC, Guardian, News.com.au. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghaei called US peace proposals excessive, unrealistic, and irrational, ABC, Guardian. Thousands of US troops, including 2,500 Marines, have arrived in the Middle East, with additional forces building capacity for potential future operations, ABC, Guardian. Oil prices are on track for a record monthly rise, with Brent crude up 54% since March, Guardian. Israel launched missile strikes on military infrastructure in Tehran and Iran-backed Hezbollah targets in Beirut, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Guardian report Iran's parliament is considering exiting the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but News.com.au only mentions this as a potential move without confirmation. ABC states Iran's missile strike on Turkish airspace was the fourth such incident since the war began, while Guardian does not mention this count. Guardian reports Trump's preference to take the oil in Iran, implying seizure, but ABC and News.com.au do not explicitly state this as a direct quote from Trump. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Federal judge dismisses most of Blake Lively's sexual harassment claims against Justin Baldoni in It Ends With Us case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Federal Judge Louis Lyman dismissed 10 of Blake Lively's 13 claims against Justin Baldoni in a lawsuit filed in December 2023. Only 3 claims remain: breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting in retaliation. Judge Lyman ruled Lively was an independent contractor, not an employee, so her sexual harassment claims under Title VII were invalid. The trial is scheduled to begin on May 18, 2025, in Manhattan's U.S. District Court. Justin Baldoni directed and co-starred in the 2024 film It Ends With Us*, which grossed over $350 million worldwide. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Lively's emotional distress claims were dismissed in June 2024, but ABC does not mention this timeline explicitly. The Guardian states Lively's texts to Swift were unsealed, while ABC does not specify their legal status. ABC describes the film's debut as $50 million US, while The Guardian states it grossed over $350 million, no currency specified. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's National Film and Sound Archive's 2026 Sounds of Australia collection highlights. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jack Colson's 1991 arrest speech. Gentlemen, this is democracy manifest. What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal was added to the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection in 2026. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection includes 9 audio recordings added in 2026, including Jack Colson's speech, Missy Higgins' 2004 hit Scar, and the 2001 Reading Writing Hotline jingle. The collection requires nominated recordings to be over a decade old and is voted on by a panel of NFSA sound experts. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection was established almost 2 decades ago, around 2007. Marsha Hines' 1977 dance track You is the oldest addition to the 2026 Sounds of Australia list. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions Colson's arrest occurred in Queensland, while ABC specifies it was in Brisbane, Queensland, no contradiction in location, but ABC adds more detail. The Guardian states Colson's arrest was in 1991 and the video was uploaded to YouTube in 2009, while ABC does not specify the YouTube upload year but focuses on the 1991 arrest. The Guardian notes Coulson's speech was part of a 1991 7 News report, while ABC does not mention the specific news outlet but focuses on the 1991 arrest footage. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Western Australia activates emergency fuel supply powers amid regional shortages. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. WA Premier Roger Cook activated emergency powers under the Fuel, Energy and Power Resources Act 1972 to address fuel supply issues. Energy Minister Amberjade Sanderson stated the government invoked emergency powers to force fuel companies to disclose supply chain details, including fuel volumes, distribution points, and frequency of distribution. Only 3 of the 6 major fuel suppliers voluntarily provided supply chain information after the government's initial request. The government will impose penalties of up to $100,000 per day for corporations and $10,000 per day for individuals on non-compliant suppliers. The emergency powers are distinct from the broader state of emergency orders used during COVID-19. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Newscamau mention Prime Minister Albanese's national address and conservation measures, but SBS does not reference this. ABC and Newscamau both note the government's focus on diverting fuel to regional areas, while SBS does not specify this as a key goal. Newscamau states the government is diverting stock to where it is needed most, but ABC frames it as allocating fuel to where it is needed most. No direct contradiction but slight difference in phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Romanian trio charged for wallet-dropping scam targeting elderly Queensland shoppers. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 3 Romanian nationals, 2 men aged 49 and 42, 1 woman aged 29, were arrested in 8 Mile Plains on the 28th of March, 2024 for allegedly fleecing elderly victims, ages 70 to 94, at Queensland shopping centres using a wallet-dropping scam. $19,000 to $20,000 was seized from a unit complex in 8 Mile Plains during the arrests. Victims were targeted at shopping centres in Kenmore, Chermside, Strathpine, North Lakes, Buddina, Caloundra, and Laidley while using ATMs or paying for groceries. The 49-year-old man and 29-year-old woman were charged with multiple counts of fraud, theft, and entering with intent, and both were refused bail. The 42-year-old man was charged with 1 count of theft and bailed to appear in Southport Magistrates Court on the 8th of April, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscamau states the 49-year-old man and 29-year-old woman were charged with numerous counts of fraud and stealing without specifying numbers, while ABC provides exact counts, 542 for the man, 842 for the woman. ABC specifies the adjournment date for the refused bail individuals as the 15th of April, but Newscamau does not mention this exact date. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian court hearing on Adriana Rivas' extradition to Chile for Pinochet-era crimes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Adriana Rivas is a Bondi nanny accused of participating in the kidnapping and torture of 7 people during Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship in Chile in the 1970s. A 2-day federal court hearing in the New South Wales Federal Court began on Monday, or this week, to reconsider her extradition to Chile. Justice Michael Lee is presiding over the hearing to determine whether Rivas should be extradited to face charges in Chile. Chile formally requested Rivas' extradition in 2014, and she has been in detention in Australia since 2019 awaiting removal. Rivas fled Chile in 2011 while on bail after being arrested in 2007 on aggravated kidnapping charges. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports previously unreported emails suggest an Australian consular official helped Rivas flee Chile, but DFAT denies any record of this assistance. ABC cites Rivas' 2012 emails to the housing minister describing consular help, while SBS and DFAT deny such records exist. ABC states the extradition request has been pending since 2014 and Rivas has been detained since 2019, but SBS does not specify her detention start date. This story was covered by ABC News and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Melbourne couple charged with slavery and abuse of Indonesian woman. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chi Kit Max Chong and Angie Ye-Ling Lau are facing trial in Victoria's County Court for slavery-related offences, both pleading not guilty. The alleged victim was a 61-year-old Indonesian woman who lived with the couple in their Point Cook, Melbourne home from January 2022 until she ran away in October 2022. Mr. Chong is charged with intentionally possessing a slave and 3 counts of common assault. Ms. Lau is accused of assisting or encouraging the slavery offence. The woman was allegedly forced to cook, clean, massage Mr. Chong's legs, and sleep on the stairs or in the garage while her movements and communications were restricted. The woman presented to St. Vincent's Hospital in October 2022 with injuries including a swollen ear, laceration to the foot, swelling to her legs, and indicators of malnutrition. But not all outlets told the same story. News Khmer reports the woman was a pastor at the church Mr. Chong attended in Malaysia in 2015, while ABC does not mention her role as a pastor. News Khmer states the woman was 61 years old when she lived with the couple, but ABC does not specify her age. News Khmer says the woman was initially given a bedroom but later forced to sleep on the stairs or in the garage, while ABC states she was forced to sleep on the stairs or garage from the start. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's dominant 103-run ODI win over West Indies in a women's cricket series. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia won the first women's ODI against the West Indies by 103 runs in St Kitts on the 20th of July, 2024, AEDT. Australia scored 341 runs from 49.5 overs, setting a record women's ODI team total in the Caribbean. Phoebe Litchfield top-scored for Australia with 77 runs, and 5 other teammates reached the 40s. Stephanie Taylor scored her first women's ODI century since 2021 with 105 not out from 129 balls. Georgia Wareham was named player of the match for her 42 runs from 21 balls, 5 fours, 2 sixes, and 1 wicket, 39 runs. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the second ODI is on Sunday, but ABC says it is on Monday. The Guardian mentions the Australian team had 5 changes from the Hobart 11, while ABC does not specify the number of changes. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian political polling shows Labor's declining support amid fuel crisis and Middle East war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese's Labour government primary vote dropped to 31% in the latest news poll, from 36% in November 2023 and 34.6% at the May 2024 election. One Nation's primary vote is at 26% in news poll and 29% in Redbridge poll, both higher than the Coalition's primary vote, 21% in news poll, 17% in Redbridge. The Coalition's primary vote reached a record low of 17% in the Redbridge poll, down from 23% in February 2024. 72% of voters disapproved of US military action against Iran, with only 23% approving, reported in both news poll sources. Anthony Albanese announced Australia would underwrite the purchase of additional fuel cargoes to address supply shortages, including shiploads of fuel at subsidized rates. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states One Nation's primary vote slipped slightly to 26%, while Article 2 reports One Nation's vote rose to 29% in the Redbridge poll. Article 1 reports Labour's primary vote at 31%, Newspoll, while Article 2 reports Labour's primary vote unchanged at 32%, Redbridge. Article 1 claims the coalition's primary vote is 21%, but Article 2 states the coalition's primary vote dropped to a record low of 17% in the Redbridge poll. This story was covered by news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Scientists discover over 110 new deep-sea species in the Coral Sea during a 35-day expedition. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. More than 110 new fish and invertebrate species were discovered in the Coral Sea, with scientists expecting the total to exceed 200. The discoveries were made during a 35-day voyage on the CSIRO's Investigator research vessel, which departed Brisbane in October. The expedition explored waters between 200 metres and 3 kilometres deep in the Coral Sea Marine Park, Australia's largest marine protected area, spanning nearly 1 million square kilometres. Dr. Will White, CSIRO Voyage Chief Scientist, identified 4 new species: a skate, ray, Urolophus genus, deepwater cat shark, Apresturus genus, and a chimera, ghost shark. The Coral Sea Marine Park is located east of the Great Barrier Reef, about 1,000 kilometres off the Queensland coast, with samples collected as far as Mellish Reef. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the expedition travelled as far as Mellish Reef, 1000 kilometre off Queensland, but ABC does not specify this exact location. The Guardian states the Coral Sea waters explored were between 200 metres and 3 kilometres deep, while ABC specifies up to 3,900 metres deep, though both mention deep-sea exploration. The Guardian describes the Coral Sea as almost half a degree warmer than 30 to 40 years ago with record temperatures, but ABC does not quantify the temperature change. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Angus Taylor's car theft and coalition's fuel excise campaign ahead of press conference. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Angus Taylor's car was stolen on March 27 from an address in Canberra's inner south. The stolen vehicle was located later that day in Turner, a North Canberra suburb. ACT policing confirmed the theft and took the car for forensic examination. The incident occurred just hours before Taylor's planned joint press conference with Matt Canavan and Bridget McKenzie at a petrol station. Taylor's office declined to comment on the car theft. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH suggests Taylor's shirtless appearance was due to the car theft, while Newscomau does not mention this detail or speculate on his attire. SMH implies the car theft was the primary reason for the lack of jackets, framing it as a coincidence, whereas Newscomau does not address the attire context. SMH reports the car probably couldn't have travelled much further due to low fuel, but Newscomau does not confirm or deny this assessment. This story was covered by news.com.au and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Israeli death penalty law for Palestinians sparks UN and international condemnation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Israeli Knesset passed a law on Monday allowing the death penalty for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank convicted of deadly terror attacks by military courts. The UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, called the law patently inconsistent with Israel's international law obligations and stated its discriminatory application would constitute a war crime. The law would apply only to Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, not to Jewish extremists accused of similar crimes, creating a two-tiered justice system. Under the bill, executions would be carried out by hanging within 90 days of sentencing, with detainees held in solitary conditions with restricted legal access. Israel's last execution was in 1962, when Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann was hanged. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the bill was amended by a security committee after its first vote, while ABC does not mention this amendment process. The Guardian states the bill would apply exclusively to Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, while ABC notes it would apply to Palestinians in the West Bank but also mentions Israeli civilian courts could impose death or life sentences for similar crimes. The Guardian highlights that the bill would allow military courts to hand down death sentences with the defense minister's opinion, while ABC does not mention this specific detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Pilot fatal crash after hitting tree near Normanton Airport in February 2026. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pilot Thomas Knight, 32, died in a plane crash on February 6, 2026, near Normanton Airport, 700 kilometers west of Cairns. The aircraft was a MacJet International Beechcraft King Air B200 operated by MacJet International. The plane struck a tree approximately 360 to 580 meters beyond the runway's end after takeoff from runway 32. The aircraft descended rapidly, 1,100 feet per minute or 20 kilometers per hour, before impact, with a final speed of 300 km/h. The crash occurred shortly after takeoff from Normanton Airport, with the pilot returning from Dumagi to Normanton earlier that day. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the pilot was from Clifton Beach in Cairns, but Newscomau does not mention this detail. ABC reports the aircraft climbed to 46 meters, while Newscomau reports 150 feet, 46 meters, but emphasizes the rapid descent rate, 1,100 feet per minute, as a key detail not mentioned by ABC. ABC specifies the crash occurred 800 meters west of Normanton Airport, while Newscomau does not provide this exact distance. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Legal battle over suppression of Bondi attacker Naved Akram's family identities. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Naved Akram, 24, is charged with 59 offences including 15 counts of murder, 40 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of committing a terrorist act related to the Bondi Beach shooting on December 14, 2023. Akram's father, Sajid Akram, 50, was shot dead by police at the scene of the Bondi attack during a Hanukkah festival. A Sydney court, local court Judge Hugh Donnelly, dismissed a 40-year suppression order request for Akram's mother, brother, and sister's identities, addresses, and workplaces on March 21, 2024. Akram's license, including his address, Bonnyrigg, Sydney, was posted on social media shortly after the December 14 shooting, making suppression ineffective. Media outlets including ABC, Guardian Australia, 9, and News Corp Australia opposed the suppression order, arguing the information was already public. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Guardian both confirm Akram's address was posted on social media via his driver's license, but news.com.au does not explicitly state the exact address was leaked, only that a photo of the license was posted. ABC and Guardian describe the family's home as in Bonnyrigg, while news.com.au refers to it as Western Sydney without specifying the suburb. ABC and Guardian both report the suppression order was dismissed due to the license being posted on social media, but ABC emphasizes the intensity of commentary on overseas platforms as a key factor in the judge's ruling, while Guardian does not highlight this aspect. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian government expands classroom device ban to include smartwatches and headphones across all schools. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Victorian public and private, including Catholic, schools will ban internet-enabled smartwatches and wireless headphones from Term 1 2027. Mobile phones have been banned in Victorian public schools since 2020, with the policy expanded to all schools starting January 27, 2027. Smartwatches with notifications, internet connection, or recording functions will be restricted during school hours. Education Minister Ben Carroll stated the phone ban led to increased student focus, improved socialization, and fewer device-related incidents. Independent review found students were more focused in class and more social during breaks after the phone ban. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC notes mixed parental views on the ban's effectiveness, while The Age and Newscomau only mention support from school leaders and minimal parental opposition. The Age reports a 20% increase in students believing rules were enforced fairly at Caroline Chisholm Catholic College, but ABC and Newscomau do not provide similar school-level data. ABC states 60% of children aged 7 to 12 use smartwatches, but this statistic is not referenced in The Age or Newscomau. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teenage assault on paramedic after stolen car crash in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A stolen Mazda 3, stolen from Mulgrave on March 21, collided with a Volkswagen Jetta at Nicholson St and Victoria Parade, Carlton, just before 6 a.m. on Saturday. 4 teenage males were travelling in the stolen Mazda 3, 2 fled the scene, while a 19-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy were injured. A 66-year-old man and a 76-year-old woman from Terang were in the Volkswagen and were taken to hospital as a precaution. The 15-year-old boy assaulted a paramedic during transport to hospital, requiring treatment for their injuries. Police are searching for the 2 boys who fled the scene and urged witnesses to contact Crime Stoppers. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states the 19-year-old man assaulted the paramedic, while ABC states the 15-year-old boy assaulted the paramedic. Newscomau does not specify injury severity for the 19-year-old, while ABC describes the 19-year-old as seriously injured and the 15-year-old as minor injuries. Newscomau does not mention the 2 fleeing boys being described as on the run or in custody as ABC does. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sydney gym shooting investigation with 3 charged men. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A shooting occurred outside a gym on Steer Road, Gregory Hills, Sydney's southwest at 8:30 a.m. on December 5, 2025. 2 masked men fired 12 shots at a 48-year-old man outside the gym. He escaped uninjured. The shooters fled in a red Range Rover SUV with cloned number plates, later found abandoned in bushland near Macquarie Grove Road, Cobbitty. Police recovered clothing, masks, cloned number plates, and 2 pistols from the bushland near the ditched car. A 40-year-old man was charged with shooting with intent to murder and knowingly directing a criminal group, arrested in Parramatta. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau does not mention the alleged target's name, Stephen Hallaby, as reported by ABC. ABC specifies the 32-year-old was charged with contribute criminal activity, while Newscomau does not include this charge. Newscomau states the 38-year-old was arrested on Tuesday and set to face bail division court on Wednesday, but ABC does not specify the exact date for the 38-year-old's court appearance. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arsenal Women's Super League derby win over Tottenham with Alessia Russo's hat-trick. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Arsenal defeated Tottenham 3-1 in the Women's Super League at the Emirates Stadium on Saturday. Alessia Russo scored a hat-trick in the first 27 minutes for Arsenal, including goals at 4 foot, 11, and 19, or 22 per Article 1. Tottenham's only goal came from a Frida Lenhardsson-Marnum own goal at 34, or 29 per Article 2. Arsenal's goalscorers included Alessia Russo, 3, Caitlin Ford, 1, and Stina Blackstenius, 1. Tottenham's manager is Martin Ho, who previously mentioned 45 minutes of free football as a concern. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Tottenham lost 5-1 at half-time to Manchester City, but Article 2 says it was 5-2 at full time. Article 1 lists Russo's hat-trick goals at 22, 29, and 34, with own goal at 32, while Article 2 lists them at 4, 11, and 19, own goal at 29. Article 1 mentions Russo's 25 goal contributions in 31 games, but Article 2 does not specify this exact number. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sam Kerr's reported transfer from Chelsea to US NWSL club Denver Summit amid contract expiry speculation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sam Kerr is a 32-year-old Matildas captain and Chelsea striker with an expiring contract at season's end. Network 10 reported Kerr has signed with Colorado-based NWSL expansion club Denver Summit after 6 seasons at Chelsea. Kerr scored 110 goals in 153 matches for Chelsea since joining in 2019, winning 5 WSL titles and 3 FA Cups. Kerr posted on Snapchat denying the move. "Don't believe everything you read in the media, man. They know a decision before me." Denver Summit's owners include US ski star Mikaela Shiffrin and NFL legend Peyton Manning. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Chelsea's Champions League quarter-final exit was on Wednesday night, while ABC says it was Thursday AEDT. The Guardian notes Kerr's ACL injury return has limited her minutes under Sonia Bompasta, but ABC omits this detail. The Guardian highlights Kerr's reduced role and slow fitness return this season, while ABC does not mention it. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Lachlan Kennedy's back-to-back 200m wins over Gout at Moree plant meet. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lachlan Kennedy won the 200-meter at the Moree plant meet with a time of 20.38s, beating Gout who ran 20.43s. The race took place at Melbourne's Lakeside Stadium, Albert Park, with around 10,000 spectators in attendance. Kennedy also won the 100-meter earlier in the evening with a time of 10.03s, a meet record. Gout issued a warning after the loss, stating "I'll be back for nationals for sure." Cam Myers set a new Australian record in the 1500m with a time of 3:30.42s. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH and ABC mention Kennedy's weird leg weights in the gym, but this detail is not present in The Guardian or The Age. The Guardian describes Kennedy's 100m win as deserved and blistering despite conditions, while SMH and ABC do not explicitly state this. The Guardian compares Kennedy and Gout to Sylvester Stallone and Apollo Creed, a narrative not present in the other sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US directs embassies to counter foreign propaganda using Elon Musk's X platform and military psychological ops. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US State Department issued a cable signed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio on March 29 directing all American embassies and consulates worldwide to launch coordinated campaigns against foreign propaganda. The cable endorses Elon Musk's X, formerly Twitter, and its community notes feature as an innovative and crowdsourced tool to counter disinformation without compromising free speech or privacy. The directive instructs embassies to work alongside the US military's Psychological Operations Unit, MISO, formerly PSYOP, to address disinformation. The cable highlights Iran, Russia, and China as state actors conducting sophisticated disinformation campaigns targeting US allies in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The US is at war with Iran, which operates one of the world's most sophisticated state disinformation apparatuses. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two Guardian articles provided. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iraq qualifies for 2026 World Cup after defeating Bolivia in a playoff. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Iraq defeated Bolivia 2-1 in an intercontinental playoff on June 12, 2025 to secure their first World Cup appearance since 1986. The match took place in Monterrey, Mexico, with goals scored by Ali Al-Hamadi, 9th minute, and Ayman Hussein, 82nd minute. Graham Arnold is the Australian coach who led Iraq through the playoffs and to qualification. Iraq will play in Group I at the 2026 World Cup alongside France, Senegal, and Norway. The 2026 World Cup will be held in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the playoff was on Tuesday, June 11, 2025, while Article 2 implies it was on Tuesday but does not specify the date explicitly. Context suggests June 12, 2025. Article 1 says Hussein scored the winning goal in the final intercontinental playoff, while Article 2 states Al-Hamadi scored first and Hussein scored the second goal. No contradiction in goals, but emphasis differs. Article 1 mentions Iraq's 1986 World Cup was tainted by Uday Hussein's regime and brutality, while Article 2 does not mention this context. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's response to US-Iran war and domestic fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese was playing tennis at Coogee Beach Tennis Club on the 28th of February when the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran, marking the start of Operation Epic Fury. The Australian government was not consulted before the US launched Operation Epic Fury on the 28th of February, 2024. Australia's fuel stocks were described as the highest they've been for any time in the past 15 years by Energy Minister Chris Bowen on the 3rd of March. The average price of diesel surged past $2.60 per litre and unleaded petrol reached $2.20 per litre in capital cities by 12 to 13 March 2024. The government announced a temporary halving of the fuel excise for 3 months, costing the budget $2.55 billion. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports the government feared farmers would face diesel shortages for the 2024 seeding period by early March, while ABC does not mention this specific concern. The Guardian states Trump's social media outburst on the 18th of March explicitly listed Australia as a holdout even though the US had not formally requested support, but ABC does not reference this specific tweet. The Guardian highlights that the coalition accused the government of being flat-footed in response to the fuel crisis, while ABC does not include this direct quote or accusation. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Manly Sea Eagles appoint Kieran Foran as interim coach after sacking Anthony Seibold. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kieran Foran was named Manly Sea Eagles interim coach on the 12th of April, 2026 after Anthony Seibold was sacked following a 0-3 start to the season. Foran's first game as head coach is against the Dolphins at Redcliffe on the 18th of April, 2026, Thursday night. Manly sacked Seibold after 3 consecutive losses, including a home defeat to the Sydney Roosters on the 11th of April, 2026. Foran played 196 games for Manly across 2 stints and retired in 2025 after winning the Pacific Cup with New Zealand. Foran is 35 years old and previously worked as an analyst for Fox Sports. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Foran was appointed at Brookvale Oval the morning after Seibold's sacking, but Article 2 does not specify the exact location or timing of the appointment beyond this week. Article 1 mentions Foran's Fox Sports commentary on the 11th of April, 2026, Friday night, as the moment he heard of Seibold's sacking, while Article 2 does not reference this detail. Article 1 highlights Foran's shock at Seibold's dismissal, but Article 2 omits this emotional reaction entirely. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media fact checker. Tiger Woods Florida DUI arrest and car crash aftermath. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tiger Woods was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence, DUI, on March 27, 2025, near Jupiter Island, Florida, after his Land Rover rolled onto its side after clipping a truck. Woods told authorities he was looking down at his phone and changing the radio station before the crash. Woods was the sole occupant of the SUV and exited through the front passenger side due to the rollover. Deputies observed several signs of impairment in Woods, including profuse sweating, sluggish movement, bloodshot and glassy eyes, and lethargic speech. Woods admitted to taking a few prescription medications earlier in the day, including Vicodin, hydrocodone, blood pressure, and cholesterol medication. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Woods was arrested at 3:12 p.m., while ABC does not specify the exact arrest time. The Guardian states Woods was held for mandatory 8 hours before posting $1,150 bail, but ABC does not mention bail amount. The Guardian reports Woods was taken to a hospital for medical clearance before jail, while ABC does not mention this step. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. California sheriffs disputed voter fraud investigation and ballot seizures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chad Bianco, Riverside County Sheriff and Republican gubernatorial candidate, halted an investigation into alleged voter fraud in the November 2023 Prop 50 election after politically motivated lawsuits and court filings. Bianco seized over 650,000 ballots from the Prop 50 election in January 2024, defying objections from state officials including Rob Bonta, California Attorney General, and Shirley Weber, Secretary of State. The Riverside Election Integrity Team claimed a discrepancy of 45,896 votes between official tallies and handwritten records, while state officials confirmed the actual difference was only 103 votes. Rob Bonta filed a petition with the California Supreme Court on January 26, 2024, arguing Bianco lacked legal authority to seize ballots, calling it an unprecedented constitutional emergency. Bonta's office accused Bianco of obtaining facial insufficient evidence for search warrants and violating directives to pause the investigation, leading to a lawsuit filed by the UCLA Voting Rights Project. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Bianco halted the inquiry due to politically motivated lawsuits and court filings, while Article 2 does not explicitly mention this as the primary reason for halting, focusing instead on ongoing seizures and legal challenges. Article 1 attributes the discrepancy claim to a difference of 45,896 votes between official and handwritten tallies without specifying the source's methodology, while Article 2 does not repeat this exact number verbatim but confirms the state's 103-vote discrepancy. Article 2 claims Bonta's lawsuit accused Bianco of abusing the criminal process and willfully violating directives, while Article 1 does not use these exact phrases but references a broader unprecedented constitutional emergency framing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fuel crisis impacts Australian tourism ahead of Easter 2025. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Southern Queensland tourism operators report booking cancellations due to fuel costs, with Paradise Resort seeing 10% lower Easter bookings than average, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Fuel prices in K'gari, Fraser Island, reached $4.25 per litre, among the highest in Queensland, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. The federal government announced a cut to the fuel excise to help curb rising fuel costs, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Tourism Research Australia reported a $2.3 billion drop in overnight visitor spending nationally in the year to December 2025, with Queensland losing $379 million, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Regional operators like Reflections Holidays, NSW, and Murrurundi Caravan Park, NSW, report cancellations due to fuel scarcity fears, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC Article 1 states fuel prices on Qari reached $4.25 per litre, while ABC Article 2 does not specify this exact figure but confirms high prices without a precise number. ABC Article 1 reports that ferry bookings to North Stradbroke Island stayed high, but ABC Article 2 does not mention this specific destination's performance. ABC Article 1 highlights that Aussie World expects families to travel closer to home as a silver lining, while ABC Article 2 does not discuss this specific business's response. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US allows Russian oil tanker to deliver fuel to Cuba amid US blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Russian-flagged tanker Anatoly Kolodkin is carrying approximately 650,000 to 730,000 barrels of Urals crude oil from Primorsk to Cuba's Matanzas port. The tanker was last tracked just off the eastern tip of Cuba, near Matanzas, and expected to arrive by Tuesday local time, per Marine Traffic LSEG and ABC tracking data. Cuba has faced no oil imports for 3 months, leading to severe gasoline rationing, energy crises, and island-wide blackouts. The US under Trump has blocked all oil shipments to Cuba, including Venezuelan oil, and threatened sanctions on third countries supplying Cuba, e.g., Mexico halted exports. Donald Trump stated publicly that he has no problem with the Russian tanker delivering oil to Cuba, framing it as humanitarian relief. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 650,000 barrels of crude, while ABC states 730,000 barrels, though both cite tracking data sources. The Guardian mentions the US temporarily lifted sanctions on Russia to help oil flow post-Iran strikes, which ABC does not reference. ABC claims the oil would last Cuba 9 or 10 days, 180,000 barrels of diesel, but The Guardian does not specify diesel quantities or duration. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government underwrites fuel imports amid Middle East tensions and shortages. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese announced new fuel security powers on Saturday, the 24th of February, 2024, to address soaring diesel and petrol prices and shortages in Australia. The government will use public funds via Export Finance Australia to underwrite the purchase of additional shiploads of fuel, fertiliser, and other essentials to boost supply. Shortages have been reported at hundreds of service stations, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, with panic buying cited as a contributing factor. The government will introduce amendments to Australia's Export Finance and Insurance Corporation Act on Monday, the 26th of February, 2024, to grant new fuel security powers. Independent distributors supplying regional Australia are struggling to secure enough fuel from major importers, leaving some stations dry. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian emphasises the government's focus on boosting supply via underwriting, while ABC highlights the opposition's repeated demand for a fuel excise cut as the primary solution. The Guardian does not mention the opposition's call for a fuel excise cut, while ABC explicitly reports Angus Taylor's repeated calls for halving the 53-cent per litre excise. The Guardian states the government will underwrite additional supplies available on the international market without specifying cost implications, while ABC includes Tony Wood's comment that the cost to taxpayers is unclear and budget relevant. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's potential gas supply shortfall and government's threat to limit exports via ADGSM. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Madeleine King, Australia's Minister for Resources, issued a notice of intent under the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, ADGSM, on April 2024, targeting July-September 2024 for potential gas export limits. The ACCC forecasted a potential gas supply shortfall of 12 petajoules for the third quarter, July or September 2024, including a 10 petajoule shortfall in July alone. Gas producers have 30 days, until mid-May 2024, to respond to the government's notice before export controls may be imposed under ADGSM. The heads of agreement ensuring domestic gas supply expired at the start of 2024, and no new deal has been reached between the government and industry. Madeleine King described the notice as a precautionary measure to ensure domestic supply priority during Middle East conflict-related disruptions, with no current export limits in place. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the notice does not place any limits on gas exports currently, while ABC implies the notice signals an intent to impose limits if producers do not comply. News Kamau emphasizes Australia's domestic market is well supplied with no immediate risk, whereas ABC frames the notice as a proactive measure to prepare for potential shortages. ABC reports the Prime Minister's department is exploring a new tax on gas and thermal coal exports, which is not mentioned in News Kamau. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NASA's Artemis II mission, first crewed lunar flyby in over 50 years. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Artemis II mission launched on November 16, 2024, or scheduled for early April 2025 in some sources, carrying 4 astronauts Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen on a 10-day mission around the Moon without landing. The crew includes the first woman, Christina Koch, first person of color, Victor Glover, and first non-American, Jeremy Hansen, to travel beyond low Earth orbit. The mission uses NASA's Space Launch System, SLS, rocket, standing 322 feet, 98 meters, tall, and the Orion spacecraft, which will travel farther from Earth than any previous human mission, reaching approximately 250,000 to 426,500 miles, 402,336 to 686,000 kilometers. The translunar injection burn, lasting about 6 minutes, occurred roughly 26 hours after launch to propel the spacecraft toward the Moon, entering its gravitational sphere on Flight Day 6. The launch took place from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, with tens of thousands of spectators gathered to witness the event, reminiscent of Apollo-era launches. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 4, Guardian, states the launch was scheduled for February 2025, while Articles 6, ABC, and 7, Guardian, clarify the launch was delayed due to technical issues and occurred in early April 2025, or November 2024 in Article 1. Article 4, Guardian, mentions the launch was originally intended for February 2025 after years of delays, but Articles 1, 3, and 6 indicate the mission faced repeated setbacks, including hydrogen fuel leaks and helium line clogs, pushing the launch to April 2025. Article 5, ABC, states the launch window opened on April 6, 2025, while Articles 1, 3, and 6 mention the launch window was in early April 2025 without specifying an exact date, and Article 7, Guardian, states the launch was scheduled for November 16, 2024. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian politician Andrew Hastie criticises US-Iran war strategy and economic fallout impacts on Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Andrew Hastie is a senior Liberal frontbencher and shadow minister for industry and sovereign capability. Hastie served as a Special Forces veteran and fought in the Middle East alongside American troops. Hastie stated on ABC's *Insiders*, February 2024, that the US-Iran war was a huge miscalculation by Donald Trump. Hastie criticized Trump for not consulting allies like Australia before the conflict, citing lack of lead time. Iran has continued attacking neighboring Gulf countries and blockading the Strait of Hormuz despite Trump's claims of victory. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Hastie warned Australia faces a twin energy shock in oil and gas, while ABC does not explicitly mention this term but focuses on gas export levies instead. News Kamau highlights Hasty's backing of the US and Israel against Iran's murderous regime, but ABC omits this explicit endorsement in favor of economic critiques. News Kamau reports Trump's claim of obliterating Iran's nuclear program, 2023, as context, while ABC does not reference this specific claim or timeline. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. International coalition meeting to reopen Strait of Hormuz amid Iran blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A virtual meeting of 35 to 40 countries, including Australia, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Japan, Canada, South Korea, UAE, Nigeria, was held on the 29th of March, 2024 to discuss reopening the Strait of Hormuz, excluding the US. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong attended the meeting, with Defence Minister Richard Marles confirming Australia's participation and deployment of an E-7 Wedgetail surveillance aircraft in the UAE. The UK-led meeting focused on diplomatic and political measures to restore freedom of navigation, ensure safety of trapped ships, around 1,000 to 2,000 vessels and 20,000 seafarers, and resume movement of vital commodities, oil, gas, fertilizer. Iran has effectively blocked the Strait of Hormuz since US-Israel strikes on the 28th of February, 2024, reducing daily vessel traffic from 150 to 25 vessels in the 24 hours leading up to the meeting. About 20% of the world's oil and gas supplies, and 13 of global fertilizers, previously passed through the strait, with blockades causing global fuel and food price spikes. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News Corp Australia report Australia may deploy SAS operatives to the Middle East, but News Corp Australia clarifies they are not involved in offensive action, while ABC does not mention SAS deployment. The Guardian states Iran has virtually closed the strait, while ABC and News Corp Australia describe it as a partial blockade with some vessels still passing. Donald Trump's claim of a ceasefire option on offer to Iran was denied by Iran's parliament head Ibrahim Azizi, who stated the strait would only reopen for those who comply with Iran's new laws, Guardian vs Trump's ex-post. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel supply crisis and government response amid Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia currently holds 30 days of diesel, 39 days of petrol, and 30 days of jet fuel in reserve, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Fuel shipments to Australia are secured through May 2024, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. The federal government has passed legislation to underwrite future fuel shipments, covering price differences if importers sell at a loss, ABC Article 1. The government cut the fuel excise by 26.3 cents per litre, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese dismissed preliminary government modelling as speculation, ABC Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the government has passed legislation to underwrite future fuel shipments and will also support fertilizer imports, while Article 2 does not mention fertilizer underwriting explicitly. Article 1 states the government is working to shore up supplies and prevent rationing, while Article 2 states the government is not considering rationing but does not explicitly say it is actively preventing it. Article 1 states the government is working to properly understand how quickly life could be difficult, while Article 2 does not mention this specific focus on understanding scenarios. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NRL legend Nathan Merritt's cancer diagnosis and South Sydney's Legacy Bell appearance. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nathan Merritt has stage 4 cancer affecting his liver and esophagus. Merritt has been given approximately 12 months to live by doctors. Merritt will ring the legacy bell for South Sydney against the Bulldogs on Good Friday at Accor Stadium. Merritt last played for South Sydney in 2022 and has not attended a game in over 2 years. Campbell Graham returns from a shoulder injury to play for South Sydney on Good Friday. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Merritt scored 146 tries for the Rabbitohs, while SMH reports 154 career tries, 135 for Souths. News Kamau does not mention Merritt's dying wish for a premiership, only SMH reports this. News Kamau does not reference Merritt's induced coma in late 2023 due to pneumonia, only SMH details this. This story was covered by news.com.au and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 NSW teenagers arrested over alleged extremist material and terror probe in Moree. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 teenagers, aged 15 and 16, from Moree, NSW, were charged in a counter-terrorism investigation. The investigation began in December 2023 after police received information a 15-year-old accessed extremist material online. On the 27th of March, police searched a home and seized a mobile phone, a ballistic-style vest, and several notebooks from the 15-year-old. The 15-year-old was initially charged with possession of extremist material after the 27th of March search. On the 28th of March, further raids on 2 Moree homes seized handwritten notes and extremist literature. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and news.com.au, Article 1, report the teens appeared in court on Friday, the 29th of March, but news.com.au, Article 3, says the 15-year-old was due in court on Saturday, the 30th of March. The Guardian and news.com.au, Article 1, do not mention a prohibited weapon charge, but news.com.au, Article 3, states the 15-year-old was charged with possessing or using a prohibited weapon, ballistic vest, without a permit. News.com.au, Article 1, says the 16-year-old was arrested later that morning, the 28th of March, but The Guardian does not specify the timing of the 16-year-old's arrest. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. German TV star Colleen Fernandez accuses ex-husband Christian Ullmann of AI porn and digital abuse, sparking national debate. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Colleen Fernandez accused Christian Ullmann of creating and distributing AI-generated deepfake pornographic images of her via fake social media accounts. Fernandez filed a legal complaint against Ullmann in Spain in 2025, citing stronger legal protections for gender-based violence there. Ullmann's lawyer Christian Schertz denied the allegations, calling Fernandez claims fake facts and stating Ullmann would sue Der Spiegel. Fernandez revealed in Der Spiegel that Ullmann allegedly confessed to her after the release of her 2024 documentary about the abuse. Over 10,000 protesters gathered at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate in support of Fernandez and against digital violence in Germany. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Ullmann's lawyer accused Der Spiegel of spreading inadmissible coverage based on suspicions, while Article 2 omits this specific phrasing. Article 1 claims Ullmann's lawyer argued Fernandez's dispute was unrelated to the broader German debate on digital violence, but Article 2 does not reference this. Article 1 mentions the earlier investigation was suspended in June 2024, while Article 2 does not specify the exact month of suspension. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fair Work Commission abolishes junior pay rates for 18 to 20-year-olds in Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Fair Work Commission abolished junior pay rates for workers aged 18 to 20 in retail, fast food, and pharmacy sectors. Around 500,000 workers are estimated to be eligible for the pay rise, according to ABS data. Junior pay rates previously paid 18-year-olds 70% of the award rate, 19-year-olds 80%, and 20-year-olds 90%. The changes apply to the General Retail Industry Award, Fast Food Industry Award, and Pharmacy Industry Award. The wage adjustments will be phased in over up to 4 years, with the first changes starting in December 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the sources regarding factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former AFL player Nick Stevens convicted of fraud in pool installation scheme. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nick Stevens was found guilty on 12 counts of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document in the County Court of Victoria, ABC News. Stevens was remanded in custody until his plea hearing on May 21, 2024, ABC News. The case involved 6 families in Mildura, Victoria, who were defrauded of a total of $170,000 to $171,000 for pools they never received or had illegally installed, ABC News. Stevens pleaded not guilty to all 14 fraud-related charges, ABC News. Judge Fiona Todd denied an extension of Stevens' bail, stating she was unconvinced he should remain on bail, ABC News. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Stevens was 45 years old at the time of the trial, while Newscomau states he was 46, ABC versus Newscomau. ABC mentions Stevens had financial difficulty towards the end of 2017, while Newscomau states he had stopped working on projects by early 2018, ABC versus Newscomau. ABC reports Stevens' defense argued he tried to fix them after realizing he couldn't complete the jobs, while Newscomau does not include this specific phrasing, ABC versus Newscomau. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Westpac CEO warns of Australian recession risks amid inflation and geopolitical pressures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Miller, CEO of Westpac, warned in interviews with ABC's That's Business podcast that Australia faces a chance of a recession due to inflationary pressures and geopolitical tensions, ABC News. Inflation in Australia rose 3.7% in February 2026, down 0.1% from January, but remains above the Reserve Bank of Australia's, RBA, target band of 2 to 3%, ABC. The RBA has raised interest rates twice in 2026, most recently to 4.1%, from 3.85%, in March 2026, News. Westpac's chief economist Lucy Ellis forecasted 3 more interest rate hikes by August 2026 in a note published on March 2026, ABC. Australians lost $2.18 billion to scams in 2025, with investment scams accounting for $837.7 million in losses, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Westpac's fixed rates are now all above 6%, with NAB at 6.04%, while Newscomau states none of the Big Four banks offer a fixed rate under 6%, no specific bank rate provided. ABC cites Lucy Ellis forecasting 3 more rate hikes by August 2026, but Newscomau does not reference this specific forecast or timeline. ABC quotes Miller saying 1 more rate hike would return us to where we started when there was a rate reduction program, 4.35%, while Newscomau omits this exact cash rate figure. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Western Australia faces severe mouse plague threatening agriculture and homes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. CSIRO Research Officer Steve Henry is warning about unprecedented mouse plague proportions in Western Australia's grain paddocks, ABC News. Mouse numbers in Western Australian paddocks exceed 200 to 8,000 mice per hectare, with some regions reporting 4,000 burrows per hectare, ABC, 200 to 300, Newscomau, 8,000. Farmers in WA's Midwest, Wheatbelt, and Goldfields Esperance regions are reporting severe infestations, Newscomer. Steve Henry visited WA in 2022 when mouse numbers were high, but this year's outbreak is significantly worse, ABC. Mice are damaging crops by consuming freshly sown seeds, particularly in canola and cereal crops, Newscomer. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports mice numbers in paddocks as over 200 to 300 per hectare, while Newscomer states some paddocks have up to 8,000 mice per hectare. ABC does not mention federal approval issues for high-strength bait, but Newscomer highlights farmers needing an exemption for ZP50. Newscomer states farmers are unable to access ZP50 without federal approval, while ABC does not address this regulatory hurdle. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Asia-Pacific jet fuel supply crisis threatens Australia's aviation industry due to Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia imports roughly 25% of its refined fuel from South Korea, including 18% of its total jet fuel imports, Guardian, ABC. China supplies about a third of Australia's jet fuel and has reportedly restricted jet fuel exports, Guardian, ABC. South Korea refines Middle Eastern crude oil into petroleum products for export, making it a key fuel supplier to Australia, Guardian, ABC. Australia relies on foreign jet fuel for about 80% of its annual consumption, 10 billion litres, Guardian, ABC. South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources has not received any request to redirect jet fuel exports for domestic use, Guardian, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports South Korean airlines, unnamed, have asked the government to redirect jet fuel exports domestically, while ABC states South Korea is capping jet fuel exports at last year's level but has not received any such request. The Guardian states China has already moved to restrict fuel exports, while ABC reports China usually exports 2 million tons monthly but expects this to drop to 1 million tons in May without explicitly stating a current restriction. The Guardian mentions China's jet fuel supplies are assured until late April or early May, Chris Bowen, but ABC does not provide a specific timeline for Chinese supply assurances. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian study links vaping to lung and oral cancer risk. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A new review led by researchers from the University of New South Wales, UNSW, found nicotine-containing vapes are likely to cause lung and oral cancers, based on evidence from 2017 to 2025. The review analysed mouse studies, human biomarker studies, oxidative stress, epigenetic changes, inflammation, and case reports, including a 19-year-old man with oral cancer linked to vaping. Australia's federal government in 2024 restricted vape sales to pharmacies for smoking cessation or nicotine dependence management only. Black market vapes in Australia often contain nicotine despite misleading labels, according to Alexander Larcombe, Curtin University, and ABC's reporting. The review did not establish a definitive epidemiological link between vaping and cancer but identified biological markers, DNA damage, inflammation, associated with cancer risk. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported Dr. Stewart said there is still no epidemiological link between vaping and cancer, while The Guardian framed the review as finding likely cancer risk without definitive numbers. The Guardian quoted Professor Stephen Duffy as saying vaping is not as harmful as smoking due to absence of combustion products, but ABC's Alexander Larcombe stated nothing inhaled into the lungs other than fresh air is likely to be completely okay. ABC emphasized Dr. Stewart's caution that vaping as a smoking cessation tool is not established as successful, while The Guardian's Freddie Seeters implied regulators should act despite inconclusive quit vaping evidence. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Private health insurance premium hikes in Australia and their economic impact. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Private health insurance premiums in Australia will rise by an average of 4.41% on April 1, 2026, marking the largest increase in nearly a decade. For-profit insurers like AIA Health Insurance, 5.98%, NIB, 5.47%, Medibank, 5.1%, and Bupa, 4.8%, are leading the increases, while not-for-profit funds such as GMHBA are raising rates by 1.98%. HCF's Hospital Optimal Gold cover will increase by 25%, adding approximately $167 annually for singles and $330 for families. The federal government attributes the premium hikes to higher hospital wages, medical technology costs, Australia's aging population, and increased demand for mental health and chronic disease services post-pandemic. Medical and hospital service costs rose by 5% in the 2024-25 financial year, according to government figures. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the average premium hike is 4.41%, while Article 2 does not provide a differing figure but emphasizes the variation in increases for different tiers of cover. Article 1 mentions the 4.41% hike is above the 3.73% increase from the previous year, but Article 2 does not explicitly compare it to the prior year's increase. Article 1 highlights that insurers are offering new customer promotions like 12 weeks free coverage, gift cards, and frequent flyer points, but Article 2 does not detail these specific promotions. This story was covered by news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US imposes 100% tariff on imported patented pharmaceuticals, impacting Australian exporters like CSL. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing a 100% tariff on patented pharmaceuticals manufactured outside the US, effective July 31, 2025. Australia exported $1.32 billion in pharmaceuticals to the US in 2025, with CSL, Melbourne-based, accounting for the bulk of these exports. The tariff applies to patented products only, excluding generic medicines and plasma-derived therapies meeting US health needs. CSL has US manufacturing facilities in Illinois and North Carolina, with a $2.2 billion or $1.5 billion expansion announced for its Illinois plant, completed by 2031. The tariff is enacted under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, unaffected by the February 2025 U.S. Supreme Court ruling on Liberation Day tariffs. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Trump previously said the tariff could be as high as 200%, while other sources, Newscomau, Thij, SMH, report the final tariff is 100%. Newscomau mentions a $2.2 billion expansion for CSL's Illinois plant, while Thij and ABC report a $1.5 billion expansion, with Thij converting it to 2.17 billion Australian dollars. ABC states the tariff was delayed until July 2025, while Newscomau and Thij do not specify a delay date beyond the July 31 effective date. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, SBS News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.